What now? What now? That is the question. It's Daniel. How you doing? Thank you for tuning back into the podcast. I'm going to tell you a story about the first yoga class I took ever in India, and it was a total freak out. I hope you enjoy this story. Anyways, if you're enjoying the podcast, you can go to leavingstressbehind.com and hit me with a donation. You can also, if you're a person that uses Amazon, amazon.com/shop/Black Market Yoga Daniel. Anything you buy through that link, I get a kickback on, so that I can, get a kickback. And hey, thank you very much, and please subscribe, and that's about it. Here's the story. Thank you for checking in. Well, I had to get up early. There's been small times in my life where I was okay with that, but most of the time, I don't like it. I've woken up kind of early, naturally. Sometimes it's interesting, but so I was in Mysore, India. It's the birthplace of really where most modern yoga has come from. And I was in this room, in this really big, crazy, old, beautiful house, but the rooms had been like sectioned off with like plywood and stuff, and it was I remember the person who sold me on the deal said it was rustic. I was leery. But, by the time I got there, I was so tired, it could have been a hammock in a tree. But luckily, it was a mat on a floor with a bug net that hung from the ceiling. So I set my alarm because I had my first yoga class, which was going to be with Sheshadri in Ashtanga yoga in Mysore, India, at the Mysore Yoga Shala. Now, Sheshadri, he has since opened his own school, and the Mysore Yoga Shala has moved. It used to be right up the street from the double tank road where the actual double tanks were, and there are these big water tanks. And anytime I got a rickshaw and I was trying to come back home, I'd tell the driver, take me to the double tanks on Double Tank Road. Most of the time, they would know where that was. There was one guy who didn't know, who drove me. I'm like, I don't know where I am, and you don't know where I am. I'm like, stop. But so I got up. I think I set the alarm on my, which was a flip phone at the time, because this is 2006 when I went to India the first time. And so I got up, got dressed, grabbed my yoga mat, and I walked. I was in the second story of the house, so I'd walk down and then walk out the side entrance, and then you had to walk across the front yard, which was just like dirt, and then across the street, which was just, again, dirt. And then there was like this house, and it was like a single-story house, and it said, Yoga Shala, and then it had something else about farming on it. The owner did some kind of farming. I went to his farm place at one point too. And there's a bunch of people standing out, and there was like a street light because it was dark. And they were all waiting for the teacher to arrive. I think it was I want to say it was either 5 or 6 in the morning. I was still pretty wiped out from the travel, and I just kind of stood there. And I don't remember if any of the people I was supposed to know were there. But anyways, Sheshadri comes out of the dark, and he's riding a bicycle. And he rides his bicycle up to the front, and people say hi to him, and he kind of is. He's you have this idea about yoga teachers in America or in the West. Like they're all like, "Hi, how are you? How do you feel? I'm glad you came." He didn't say any of that shit. He's like, okay, I'm opening the door. He's like has his head down. He pushes his bike in. I'm like, okay, that's my teacher. I don't think I had seen him until that very moment, and I think I was like, that's not what I expected. He's a kind of very short. He had short hair and he had a mustache. But he was dressed like a Brahmin. He had the string over his chest, and he was wearing the loose white. I think they call it a dhoti. Anyways, so he puts his bike somewhere. He opens up the door, and we go to the top. And I was always, the whole time I was in India, I was the last person in anywhere, because everywhere you go, when you get to the front door, you sit down and you take most people take their flip-flops off, but I don't think I've ever owned flip-flops, and I actually wore Doc Martens. So I would always have to sit down and untie my shoes and then take them off, and everyone else would just flip their flip-flops off and go in. And then all the shoes would be sitting out there, when you left. And we went in like through this side entrance. There was like a front door, but we didn't go in the front door. We went in this side entrance. And there was like a desk and then a bathroom, maybe 2 bathrooms. But it's just like a 1-story house with a cement floor. And I remember there was like a shelf. And at the top of the shelf was the only yoga block I saw in all of India on that trip. And it was wood. And it was covered with dust. I never saw it in the yoga area or the yoga room. And the yoga room turned out to be 2 rooms. So we walked past the desk, and the desk had the phone. And if you listen to my other story about getting to India, when I called that number, I didn't know where it goes. That's where I called. That was the phone. I was calling the yoga shala, but I didn't know it. So we walked past there, and he turns on the lights, and I'm a little bit nervous, because I'd never done yoga in India. I've been studying the primary series as much as I can, and I guess he recognized that I was new, so he gave me this like piece of paper. It was several pieces of paper stapled together, and it was like this cheat sheet with all the poses in a row, which is great because I was so worried because I was told that I had to memorize the sequence, and the person who booked it, who is the person who also left me in Bangalore, and she said if I didn't, know the sequence, that he wouldn't teach me, which was fucking bullshit. I think it was like an ego trip on her part. She wanted to think that, like, because it was her teacher too, and she wanted him to think, well, these people I'm bringing, they really are in the know because I'm in the know, or some shit like that. I don't know. But I was kind of relieved, although I had been studying with like this, some old VHS tape that someone had given me, and it was like this 2 hours of the Ashtanga primary series. I was doing it like neurotically, like every day. I was pretty prepared, although it seemed like a lot of information to me. So there's this big main room, and the floor, although it was cement, it had like this, it looked like a thing you would like wipe your feet on. It was like a mat, but it was huge, and I think it was like camel hair, and it was maybe like a 1/2 inch thick, which was nice. And you put your mat on that, and kind of was it wasn't harsh to be on the cement. The next time I went back to India, I was on a marble floor with just the thin mat, and that was really difficult when you're doing stuff rolling around on your back. That was when I studied with BNS Iyengar. But so there was like where the door that we didn't come in, the front door of the house, you could go in there, and there was like 2 big doors that opened up into the main room, but you could sneak off into that side. And I'm like, I'm going to sneak off into the side because I'm not sure about, anything. And I just want to kind of get the lay of the land before I have the teacher interacting with me or seeing me, or, I was kind of nervous, like I said. So I set up way off in this other, like at the foyer or what, by the front door. And then the other big room is where everyone else is. And so we sit down, and he starts this chant, Asatoma Sadgamayan. At the time, I didn't know what it was, Mituma Matam Gamayan. And I'm like, oh, and everyone's like chanting it back to him. So I'm just like, I'm moving my mouth like I know what the fuck he's saying, just like that feeling like you need to fit in, like you need to know anything. It's funny. It's real funny. So we finish that, and we stand up, and he leads the sun salutations, but he leads them counting. So he's not saying like, hey, do this, hey, do that. He's saying, ekam, which is arms up. It actually means one. Dwi, which is a forward fold. Trini, which is like when I say look up. Chatari, which we jump back into chaturanga, which is it's like when you've lowered down through the push-ups. So some people lowered down through the push-ups. Some people would just jump straight back, and then pancha was up dog. That meant 5. And so he just like calling out these numbers. Of course, there are these numbers in a language I don't fucking know. And it's the language of Sanskrit, which is this, the ancient language of that's attached to yoga. But I know the sun salutations, so I'm doing them. I've done them bunches of times, and it was cool. And I'm like, okay, I think I got this. And then he stops, and then the rest of it's done silent, after the sun salutation. So as soon as you get into the forward folds at the end of the sun salutation. So, and it was 5 and 5. 5 sun A, 5 sun B. So at the end of sun B, he stops counting, and he starts walking around the room, interacting with the students. And interacting, I mean, he's adjusting them. And he's adjusting some of them, most of them, extreme adjustments. Like, I remember the guy I met on the train telling me about Sheshadri, and he said, it's extreme. He's like, he is the adjustment guy, and it's like, I mean, he kind of warned me. He said, you need to watch yourself, because he's really going to be pushing on you. And I watched him do this with people, and but he hadn't done anything with me. And so we got to, so extended side angle, the twist of extended side angle, not on the paper, was kind of interesting. I thought, wow, that's interesting, because, this Ashtanga thing, a lot of people think it's very rigid, and people take it very rigidly, but that pose was missing. I eventually asked him, he said, you could do it, you could not do it, whatever. So I did it because I had been practicing like that, but I'd asked him later, and I think I did it that first day, although I couldn't tell you. A lot of it's a blur. He comes into the room that I am in, which is the foyer, which was pretty big. I think it had 6 people in it, maybe less. And he walks up to me. I think I'm doing Warrior 2. And I have my eyes closed, right? And I never heard you're not supposed to close your eyes in a yoga class. And I don't know if I knew he came up to me or if I sensed that it. I think he grabbed my hand that was in front of me, and he says, "Open eyes." So I opened my eyes, and he said something about breathing, and he grabbed me by my throat. And I was like, oh shit, okay. And he said, breathe. And I think he said something about where I was supposed to look, but it wasn't clear. His English was like really, really bad, and he almost never spoke English. So I was like, okay, shit. So you're not supposed to close your eyes in yoga class. Got it. Okay. So I never closed my eyes again. And I keep going through the sequencing, and I think his son came later, and his son was doing adjustments in that room too. And there was, I remember this picture on the wall, and under the picture it said, absolutely no photography. I thought, wow. But his son was adjusting this girl, and they were laughing, and someone was taking a picture of her, and I thought, that's interesting. Anyways, so I'm doing the primary series, to whatever the best of my ability was. And I get to the backbending part. Now, by this time, I don't think he's interacted with me much. I've seen him interacting with a lot of other people. When I say interacting, I mean adjusting and just really grabbing people and picking them up. And, later, he used to do this thing because he could tell people were sometimes freaked out. It's like, not like he was a harsh dude, but he's like very serious. I mean, he wasn't fucking around. And this really big guy, like he picks him up and the guy's like, oh, and he's like, what's my name? Like Sheshadri's yelling. What he meant was, what's your name? Everyone was laughing. It was very funny. The guy was tripping, man. The guy was like freaking out. So anyways, I'm doing the back bending, Urdhva Dhanurasana. And he comes in and I think he says, do it again or something. So I come up into the full back bend, which I actually don't do anymore. And he gets down on his hands and knees and crawls underneath me from my front backwards. So he's now on his hands and knees underneath me, and I'm doing full back bend, and he puts his shoulders on the back of my knees. So his head's like poking out through my legs, and his shoulders, my legs are kind of against his shoulders. And then he stands up, and I am hanging from his back. So he's standing, he's holding my ankles, my legs are bent over his shoulders, and my whole body is dropping off his back. So my head would like be swinging, against right below his rear end. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And like, I'm thinking, what did I get myself into? And I have like this, like, I want to say I have like this moment where I'm like, it felt like some universal midlife crisis moment that every man had to experience. Like, I'm in this country on the other side of the world doing this weird, at the time, weird esoteric practice. And the teacher has now lifted me up and I'm hanging off his back on my first class ever in yoga. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. And he says, grab ears. So I just grab my ears, because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. And he leans forward and then comes up and he's swinging me like down, like kind of partially through his legs. And I'm swinging up and off his back, and he's swinging and swinging and swinging. And then he yells, stand. And he leans all the way forward, puts my feet down on the mat, and then jumps out from underneath me and then walks away. And I'm like, holy fuck, what just happened? Like, I don't remember even what I did. And I was like, I can't believe that just happened. No teacher in America had like done any kind of adjustment on me. There was Sarah Eisenberg down at Liberation occasionally did some stuff, but nothing like that. It was this moment, like it just like crashed me. My mind just like crashed, like a computer crash. Like it just went like black screen, blue screen, pinwheel of death or whatever. It freaked me out. But it was also like I was able to experience something I felt like maybe a lot of people hadn't experienced. So there was like this, juxtaposition of like this privilege, but then also, wait a second. I think I finished the series, and I finished kind of fast, which I did often. I eventually would ask Sheshadri, am I doing this too fast? And he's like, no problem, and I would lay down in savasana, and a lot of times I would fall asleep. A lot of times. Something you don't want to forget. Something that is like this experience that is beyond explanation. Because you say, okay, yeah, well, the teacher put you on his back, he threw you around, and he yelled some shit, whatever. Because but it was more than that physically. It was shocking, and it was transcendent, and it was unexplainable in the moment. But I'm glad I got to experience it. And I can try to relive it, and I can try to relive it here telling you this story. But it's like a ring in the tree. It's there, but it's like it's just there. I'm glad it's there. And hey, thanks for listening, man.